Do you know, over a quarter of us at some point in our life will struggle with some form of mental health condition. And when you are struggling with a mental health condition, all sorts of things can happen. It can affect our general well-being. It affects our mood. It can affect how we relate to each other, whether that's in the family or at work. And then generally, it just makes it really difficult, to get through kind of normal life. Never mind the situation that we're finding ourselves in at the moment. So why am I doing this series of small talks? Well, simply because as I've been out in the community recently, I've met quite a few people who have raised this as a concern, whether for themselves or for their neighbours, and as a community. There's such a stigma, isn't there, attached to mental health. We've seen people come out. In fact, even today, there was a video by Prince William, talking about this very thing, and it is out there, isn't it? The conversation is out there, and yet it's still a very brave thing to do, to ask for help. And sometimes, and as I'll explain to you in a minute, it's an even braver thing to do is to admit that actually you need that help yourself. So hopefully by getting something out there early, we can at least try to prevent already kind of fragile situations from getting any worse. This is something that very mildly will touch many of us possibly, who otherwise maybe not have experienced it, as we're facing so much isolation that we're not used to. And I also want to say that this is for everybody, because this is a community response. A lot of help for those who are struggling with mental health comes from the way that the community around them treats them and walks through life with them. Now you might think that you might not think by looking at me that I used to be a kind of rough, tough, very, very fit member of the armed forces. But believe it or not, at some point in my life I was. And my catchwords would be kind of man up and only the strong survive, and I was in this kind of atmosphere and where really weakness wasn't particularly looked highly upon at all. You couldn't really demonstrate or show weakness. You had to demonstrate strength and stability and character, and be that man that everybody or woman that everyone expects you to be. And in my mid-20s, I went away on operations for a while, and I came back. And after a few months, I thought everything was fine. And then suddenly I started to lose the use of my hand. And it would be like I'd be having a pint in the pub and the pint glass would just fall out of my hand. Or I have a cup of tea and the cup of tea would just be, it's 1 minute I'm drinking it, next minute it's on the floor. I remember one afternoon painting the ceiling with a roller, and suddenly that just fell out of my hand, and paint went everywhere. And I really didn't quite understand what was going on. Now at first I thought that this was a physical problem, maybe I trapped a nerve or something. But then I started to wet the bed. Now wetting the bed when you're 25 or 26 is not the kind of thing in the military, but never mind anywhere probably, as a guy or anyone, that you're going to go and admit to doing. It's not the kind of first thing I was like going to work and say, hey, guess what fellas, I've gone and wet the bed last night. And so it's something that I kind of hid. Now this only lasted for me 3 or 4 months. And after a while I got through it, and it's never recurred, and we're going back 25 years now. But during that time, and it was linked to some of the experiences that I'd had, I was left with fear, embarrassment and shame. And those 3 things I really struggled to talk about for quite a long time. And I definitely didn't talk about these things until I'd left the army, till quite a few years later. Now, that was my experience, and it's a very narrow and small experience, but it's left a real impact on me, and such that I can't imagine what it must be like to live with any form of mental health condition, day on day, week on week, month on month, year on year. It just must be dreadful. Now, a lot of you know, and those who know me well will know that that my Christian faith is really, really important to me. I never hide that to anybody. It's very much part of my life, and it's given me a set of tools, if you like, to help me through life, and certainly to help me through this. Now, a few years ago, I was introduced to an amazing organisation, or two amazing organisations, one called Mind and Soul and the other one called Livability. And what they do is they produce a resource to help communities, organisations, churches, in our case, to understand and support anyone, regardless of their faith, who is struggling with some form of mental health condition. It doesn't really matter whether you have a faith or not in this context, because the tools are transferable across all community and the whole of society. And they're very much embedded within a view of community, of being a place of love and support. So what I want to do is I just want to, as an introduction for this session, for the next couple of minutes, just introduce you generally to the tools. And then over the next series of 6 5-minute little blogs, I'll just take each tool at a time and talk a little bit through it. And remember, this is not about how individuals can necessarily get through their mental health condition. This is more about how as a community we can come together to support those people who are struggling, because that is so much part of their journey and it's so important to them. So if you can imagine a toolbox, and on the outside of that toolbox are 3 words: kindness, openness, and community spirit. And everything, I think, surrounding mental health and assisting and helping and encouraging people who are suffering from mental health conditions can be found within those 3, if you like, words. If we're kind to each other, if we have an open attitude, and if we have a strong community spirit, then we can really offer support and assistance. Now, I'm massively blessed to know that we already have an incredible community spirit where I live, and it's been absolutely amazing recently. And you only have to see the news to see how communities are coming together. So really, I don't think community spirit is much of a problem at the moment, which is great. But there is that kindness and openness that, coming together with that can really help people. Now, imagine you open the toolbox and there are 6 tools inside. So those tools would be that you're valued, that valuing people, you're cared for, so we're caring for people, you're listened to, so we're listening to people, you're accepted, so we accept people, you're understood, which means we seek to understand people, and finally you're loved, which means we seek to love people. So that's valued, cared for, listened to, accepted, understood, and loved. So if we can value, care for, accept, understand, listen to, and love people in the context of being kind and having that community spirit and having that openness, we can do a huge amount to I suppose reduce the effects of this coronavirus isolation from affecting people's mental health. So what I'll do is I'll do these 6 little 5-minute blogs just to talk about each one in a little bit more detail, and hopefully it's just a community tool. Hopefully it'll just, if nothing else, it'll just raise awareness for people to understand what other people might be going through within our community. So let's get real, folks. Let's get open, and let's face these things together, and hopefully we can really support each other over the weeks and the months ahead. Thank you.